For anybody who might be dropping in, I will be starting officially at 5 after the top of the hour. So if you're in Central Time Zone at 5:05, we will begin the topic of discussion. Again, for anyone who might be listening, I will be starting the topic of discussion at 5 after the top of the hour, just to let anybody be able to drop in from the beginning, like I have always done. If anyone has any questions before I start here in the next 2 minutes, go ahead and drop them into the chat. Okay, we're almost there, you guys. I always just like to give everybody like 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the inaugural episode of Inside the Criminal Mind, and I kind of came up with this idea specifically because I'm a massive fan of Criminal Minds. I haven't even finished like the original series, but I've always been super interested in criminal psychology, forensic psychology, and it's really interesting to see how psychology really can play a major role in how people end up committing crimes, or how criminal behavior even comes up in the first place. So it can be, a really expansive topic. And I feel like Criminal Minds is a great series that a lot of people really enjoy watching. So it can provide like a really good basis of how we can talk about these types of topics and how I can kind of help educate, again, the general public on psychological principles and how they apply to basically everyday life. Psychology doesn't have to be this massively complex discussion or topic that's like really hard to talk about. People can actually learn so much from psychological theories. So that is the basis of why I decided to start this series. So the first episode, we're going over the episode titled Entropy, which is actually season 11, episode 11. Again, I drew these randomly, like these episodes, so I felt like this was perfect for the inaugural episode, even though it was the first thing that I drew out of the pile of different episodes. So how exciting. So yeah, let's go on from here. So our overview, we're basically going to be doing this is how it's going to end up going throughout the whole entire series. We're going to start with an introduction, a synopsis of the episode, probable relevant theories, criminal prevention, and conclusion. And, it's possible that some things will change along the way. Like the way that I structure some things, just because, we're seeing how this goes and exactly how it works out. So we're going to go from here. Okay, as always, since people might be dropping in the middle of the series, some people might not know who I am if they haven't followed me on Instagram before. So my personal intro, I'm Sharissa, or Eradication Writer if you knew me from Instagram. I've had my own mental health journey, and it's not as easy as, anybody has mental health, or everybody does really. And they're not always, cut and clear and easy to overcome or get through. My own mental health journey was largely unacknowledged up until I was an adult, whenever I could actually make proper mental health decisions for myself. And even after, I didn't allow myself to get the help that I actually needed until I was about 24 years old, 23, 24 years old. And it taught me a lot whenever I actually started putting in the work and I started realizing how certain things connected with the past and how it can lay a solid foundation for people to actually, or for myself, to achieve my dreams and achieve my goals, at certain points it feels like, am I ever going to get through this rut? Am I ever going to feel happy again? Am I ever going to understand what genuine happiness feels like again? And I feel like that is a common emotion and a common feeling that a lot of people can experience, especially whenever you're experiencing mental health troubles. So I feel like I can use my story to really reach out and help many other people who might be going through similar cases. And even if the case is different, I feel like it can really help knowing that there's so many different topics of discussion and there's so many different mental health struggles. But there's a lot of different struggles that anybody can come up to and experience. And the point is that nobody's alone. So that leads into my mission, my mission in business and in life, and that's basically to help as much as I can to normalize the mental health discussion and educate the general public of psychological principles, just as I stated in the beginning. It's one of the reasons why I started these live sessions, because I want it to be an open discussion. I want people to be able to pop in the chat if I say something that triggers them, not even just triggers them, but if I say something that somebody might find interesting or somebody might want to add to, it's widely encouraged to please pop in the comments. Let me know what you think as I'm talking. Even if you're watching the recording, do not hesitate to drop a comment in the comment section, because I would love to acknowledge it. I would love to have a conversation. So, why this series? Basically, as I said in the title slide and the title presentation, criminal behavior can be related to societal issues. So obviously, if you have high crime rates in a specific area, it can create a lot of societal issues. It can cause people to feel unsafe. It can cause people to feel the need to carry a gun. It can cause the people to feel the need to have to defend themselves constantly. It can cause hate crime. Like there's a lot of different things that really are covered under this massive umbrella of criminal behavior and criminal psychology. So with this series, it's giving examples of behavior that can create multiple perspectives. And, whenever you're looking at a type of behavior, whether it's criminal behavior or non-criminal behavior, a lot of people will look at it and be like, why did this person do this? Like, that's why I decided to do this series, so we can break it down and we can think about what can potentially cause certain behaviors to happen, certain theories that might be behind these criminal behaviors, and then also discussing potential ways of prevention, how we can prevent this possible criminal behavior from developing in the first place. So I'm really excited to get into this. So let's get into it. All right. So essentially, if you're not familiar with this episode, again, it is season 11, episode 11 of the original Criminal Minds. So here's a synopsis of this episode. It's a single part of the series of episodes following a group of contract hit people. I don't want to say hit men or hit women. I'm trying very hard to do gender neutral language. So hit people. Mercenaries, I guess I could have said. Spencer, played by Matthew Gray Gubler, poses as a married man seeking to get his ex-wife killed in order to meet with the Black Widow, or the Black Widow killer. Or Kat, also played by Aubrey Plaza. I know many people are super fans of Aubrey Plaza, me included. She played in Parks and Rec and White Lotus and a few other shows that she's appeared in. She has an amazing personality. Her acting range is phenomenal, and she absolutely kills in this episode. No pun intended. But so she figured out early on in their discussion, whenever they're at dinner, that he was setting her up and that he works for the FBI in some sort of way. And this ignites an emotional and interesting dialogue and mind games between them. So throughout the whole 43, 48, 47, whatever minutes of this episode, they're constantly going back and forth. She's deflecting. She's asking him personal questions. The funny part about it in the beginning of the episode, it's literally within the first 10 minutes of the episode, she's like, let me see your ring. And then, he shows it to her. And then, she's like, what that is? That's a noose. And she plays it off so well, because she acts as if she's gonna kill these men's wives, and basically in the long run she ends up entrapping them and killing them. But let's get into the root of why she does this, and what potentially led her to behave this way, and how we can potentially prevent this type of behavior from taking place in the first place. I'm actually kind of going a little fast. All right, so here's some probable relevant theories. So first we're going to start with Kat. And I apologize if I had misspelled her name. Fandom has her name spelt with a C, but I feel weird using that for a human name, so I'm using it with a K. So Kat's key characteristics: she's charismatic, she's believable, she's charming, she's intelligent, she's smart, She knows how to talk her way in, she knows how to talk people in circles, and she knows how to like uncover their true intentions. Which, I mean, she kind of already has that in the bag because she, basically advertises, or I don't know if she advertises per se, but, she basically says, she puts herself out there as a mercenary who is willing to go out and kill these men's wives who want their wives dead. And, the fact that she is able to entrap them and kill them shows an intense amount of like fervor in her favor, because like she is just tenacious whenever it comes to this, and you can tell that it's something that she takes a lot of pleasure in, because there's a lot of reasons why. So because of all of these four or five positive characteristics, that makes her manipulative, because she seems so easy to talk to, so easy to get along with, easy to discuss issues with. She's good looking, so she has that on her side. Men, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this woman could easily do it, because she's a woman, my wife's a woman, so why not have a woman kill another woman? Even though that's like totally not a good thing. Like, I'm just saying in her point of view and in like the men's point of view, but let's go forward. So let's see, Kat's past leading to the present. Now, this information, they discuss it throughout the episode, especially whenever she's not deflecting on Spencer's past, because she spends a good solid chunk trying to understand why Spencer decided to get into the behavioral analysis unit, and why he had to take some time off from work recently, and it really plays into the emotional aspect of it, because if anyone is familiar with Criminal Minds, Spencer is the youngest. He's the youngest on the team, but he's also like the smartest. He's got like 4 PhDs or something like that, and that's hella impressive. So, and her childhood, and they don't specify exactly at what point in her childhood, and I'll explain why that's actually kind of important later on. But her father abused and then abandoned her after killing her mother. And when I say killed her mother, her father was charged with manslaughter in the death of her mother. So he did kill her in some sort of way, but at some point it must have been proven that it was an accident. But because she was a child, she probably saw this as like, you killed mom. And so, yeah, this led her to be sent to a foster home where her foster father constantly abused her. She eventually killed him because of that. She used this anguish to fuel her desire to kill men who sought to have their wives killed after she attempted to find her father, to exact revenge. So what she ended up doing was that she, after she became an adult and everything, she decided to travel the world to try to find her father so she can avenge her mother, essentially. Maybe not even avenge her mother, but she wanted to kill her father. She had developed such a deep hatred towards men because of her father that's why she ended up, basically contracted with this line or this group of mercenaries who, they all have their special little niche and how they decide to take down their targets. And for her, it's specifically men who want to kill their wives, and there's a reason why, obviously. So bottom line, this all gave her massive daddy issues. Like, she, if you're a man and you don't love your wife, then she's probably targeting you, because she's like, what the hell? So we're gonna check on some theories here. So we're gonna start on fandom, on the fandom page for the character. They mention psychopathic tendencies, how she's a psychopath, and this is something so interesting to me, because this week in my class, for anybody who might not know, I'm currently a graduate student. I'm getting my master's in psychology. And I'm getting into psychological assessment or testing and assessment. So the PCLR test is the psychopathy checklist revised test. And this is what they give to criminals who might be facing trial. This is also the same thing that they gave to Ted Bundy, that classified him as a clinical psychopath, because he scored a 39 out of 40 on this test. And anything above a 30 means that you're a psychopath. So I have a copy of the PCLR test. And I'm not gonna try to diagnose her as a psychopath or anything, because I'm not licensed to do that. And also, you know, in order to be able to diagnose someone as a psychopath, you know, in order to do the PCLR test and fill it out, you have to have a 1.5 to 2 hour interview with them, so that way you can get a decent idea. As we know, Criminal Minds is only about 43 minutes long. That's definitely not anywhere near enough time for me to be able to get an accurate perception of her psychopathy. So, but I did want to go over this because I thought it was super interesting. And so I found like an example of the PCLR test. And how this is structured is on a scale of 0, 1, or 2, 0 being definitely not present, 1 being somewhat present, and 2 being definitely present. They go over 20 different characteristics. So I'm just going to read off the list of characteristics. We have glibness / superficial charm, which, as we kind of basically already seen, she does have that. In that episode, she's very charming. She's very charismatic. You know, she seems innocent in a way. You know, like she has a mission, obviously. She has an end game. She has a goal. But that kind of leads it to be like, oh, like she knows what she's talking about. Tell me more, please. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely present from what we know, from what we see at least. Egocentricity, grandiose sense of self-worth. I mean, she feels, I would say that it's personally, from what I noticed in this 43 minutes, she has a pretty decent sense of self-awareness. She's very self-aware of who she is and where she comes from and why she does what she does. But she doesn't say that herself. She has Spencer tell her. She literally tells Spencer at one point in the episode, okay, well, you must know, you know, so much about me. Tell me what you know about me. Tell me about myself. And he does. He takes this opportunity to literally tell her, you know, what she says. Basically, like, I took notes whenever I was watching this episode, and, you know, he takes the opportunity to tell her about herself, which is, you know, that he knows that she's the Black Widow killer. She specializes in seduction and patience. She does research to know everything she can about her potential victims before meeting them. So she already knows what questions that she's going to ask ahead of time. She already knows what their answers are going to be because she does her research. And then ultimately, she manipulates them until she can kill them. And sometimes she can make them kill themselves. And she actually added that last part in there herself. She actually said it herself. She's like, yeah, you know, and you'll manipulate them and, you know, until you can kill them. And then she's like, yeah, and sometimes I can make them do it themselves. And, you know, that's kind of scary. I don't know how many people out there have been with like an unstable person before. They can be kind of frightening. So yeah. Let's see here. And basically what Spencer ends up doing in this situation is that he plays into the plan in order to catch her. So, you know, like in the episode, she realizes it's a setup. She's like, all right, I'm going to milk this as hard as I can. She sets a timer on her phone and she starts asking questions. And, you know, she tells him that he has to answer as honestly as possible, or, you know, with complete honesty. And if he's lying, then I forgot what the deal was, but you know, she can tell. So essentially, you know, that makes her scary, I guess. So then another thing on the list is proneness to boredom, low frustration tolerance. So if he gives her an answer that's not sufficient enough, she expresses like, nope, that's not good enough. You need to tell me more. And I feel like that can be a part of that. It's probably somewhat present, maybe definitely present, but she definitely is like, nope, like that answer is not good enough. You need to tell me more, like now. Pathological lying and deception, probably not, definitely not present, maybe somewhat present. I'm trying to remember if he caught her in any exact lies in the episode. Another thing is conning and lack of sincerity. I mean, honestly, that's already there. Her whole premise to her personality, to the Black Widow killer personality, is that she, she meets up with these men. These men think that they're going to have dinner and she's going to get the payment, she's going to collect the payment and she's going to go and kill their wives. But ultimately what ends up happening is she seduces them. They didn't see that coming. That's a con, and she has no remorse. So that's the lack of sincerity. Oh, actually, never mind. The next thing here says lack of remorse or guilt. There you go. There's your lack of remorse. So, whenever someone shows that they don't have empathy, that can be a massive sign of psychopathy. And it's definitely something that I feel like that's definitely present. So, I mean, if I were licensed to do this test and I'm trying to diagnose Kat, I would say that, she probably definitely has the lack of remorse or guilt because she doesn't feel bad for what she does. She's proud of it. I mean, she hates her father. So any man who wants to kill his wife to her is basically not good. So she has no problem. She thinks she's doing a service in a way. The next item on the PCLR test is the lack of affect and emotional depth. There's some moments in the episode where you can definitely see emotion in her facial expressions and in her words, especially whenever Spencer mentions, which is a lie, when Spencer mentions that he found her father and he tried looking for him. He spent so long until finally he saw that he's a homeless person and the alcoholism had basically it's clouded his memory. It's eroded some parts of his memory. So, I wouldn't say that the lack of affect and emotional depth is definitely present, maybe somewhat present just because she does show some emotional depth. The next item is callous and lack of empathy. Again, lack of empathy. She definitely has that. As we see, she kills men who are seeking to kill their wives. I keep repeating that, but I have to make sure that people understand that this is such an expansive thing, and there's so many different characteristics that play into becoming or being a psychopath. The next thing is parasitic lifestyle. I'm not too sure if she has a parasitic lifestyle. What I know is that she likes to be solo. Most of the people in the mercenary group like to be solo. So I'm not sure if, there's any sort of like parasitic relationship. The next on here is short-tempered and poor behavioral controls. So, actually we can already see, she's prone to boredom, low frustration tolerance. If you're not giving her what she wants immediately, then, she's probably going to react in some way that isn't in the best it's not the best experience. History of promiscuous sexual relations. Again, there's not enough information from the episode. Criminal Minds episodes are only 43 minutes long, and it's not a continuous interview with this so-called criminal. So, we don't really have enough information to actually talk about that. History of early behavior problems. We can go back and we can see that she was sent to a foster home where her foster father abused her and she ended up killing him. So, I think that kind of shows that she has early behavior problems. They don't necessarily say when she killed him. I'm assuming that it was towards the end of her stay in the foster home. It could possibly have been after she became an adult and then she went and took care of the issue. But there's definitely something there. Lack of realistic long-term plans. And there's not enough information from the episode necessarily. Ultimately, her long-term goal is to find her father and kill him so she can basically exact that revenge. She was abandoned. She felt abandoned. She felt like that was a major part of her life that got taken away. Impulsivity, we kind of see that towards the end of the episode whenever she realizes that she's ran out of chances. Like the FBI is going to arrest her, so she holds a gun to Spencer. She holds a gun to Spencer the whole episode, really, but she acts like she's going to take everybody hostage. And then that's whenever Shamar Moore's character, I can't remember his character's name at the moment, comes up. He reveals himself and he's like, no, we have your dad. He's right outside. He flips the script and does the same manipulation tactics on her. And that's how that gets, done. So that's the impulsivity. She makes rash decisions, and that's what ends up getting her arrested, technically. Irresponsible behavior, not enough information, frequent marital relationships. We don't really see that much information other than the fact that she deceives these men thinking that she's going to go kill their wives, but instead she kills them. History of juvenile delinquency. Again, not enough information. We know that she kills her foster father, but we don't know when she kills her foster father. Revocation of conditional release. She was never imprisoned. Failure to accept responsibility for own actions. That's kind of it. The ending scene, the last scene that she's in this episode, Spencer's chaining her up in the back of the truck, and she makes a note. She's like, I'm gonna be out in 20 years and I'm gonna find you. And and then he's like, yeah, if you're lucky, banter. I still don't have the feeling that she understands that what she was doing was necessarily wrong. I might need to rewatch the episode again. But yeah. And then the last one is many types of offense. She did help other mercenaries with certain things here and there. So, and some of these other mercenaries, like they used bombs. They had like massive casualties with some of their attacks. So, that could possibly play in it. Honestly, whenever with her being arrested at the end of the episode, it kind of encapsulates like how many different things she could potentially be charged with, but they don't really mention that. So, like I said, whenever someone's doing this test, it's performed by a psychologist of some sort, like a psychologist that does assessments, especially in the court system. And, and it's usually based on an interview of 1.5 to 2 hours where they can actually gather a basic established premise of this individual. And anything that's rated over 30 or more means that that person's considered a psychopath. And like I said at the beginning, before I started talking about the PCLR test, like Ted Bundy, I don't know if anyone watched the Netflix movie with Ted Bundy, or about Ted Bundy, that Zac Efron played him. But I'm pretty sure I remember at some point, like, they mentioned him being a psychopath. And, like, the only reason they could have probably said that is if they actually did this test. And because that was in the middle of the trial, I believe. Anyways, moving on. She definitely developed some severe, probably insecure attachment issues. She She was exposed to and experienced trauma and it can create attachment issues, especially during vulnerable developmental stages. And like this can, this definitely can create insecure attachments. Like this can make you feed off of this energy. She became attached to the father figure. And because she resented her father so much for so long, throughout her whole entire life, at least from the time that he killed her mom, she harbored that emotion and she let it eat at her and let it develop into these killer instincts, these killer tendencies, these psychopathic tendencies. So it's not too far off that, she definitely developed attachment issues. So let's see here, going on to the next slide. So this is how we can potentially prevent this criminal behavior. We look at the age of trauma. We look at the age of trauma and we can assume that this was at some point in her childhood. And it's very possible that whenever we think of Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, this is one of my favorite things to consider because in my last project that I did in school, I used the Erikson stages of psychosocial development to explain how trauma can create future issues in one's life if they don't receive proper mental health intervention. There's certain stages in one's childhood. Childhood's broken up into 4 stages, I believe. And I'm going to assume that this was probably in either the mid-childhood or late childhood phase before she hit adolescence. This becomes a vulnerable time to experience something scary or traumatic. The fact that her mother died, the fact that her father was involved, the fact that her father abandoned her whenever he had to go to prison, the fact that when she went into foster care, the foster father was abusing her. These are massive examples and evidence that, definitely plays a role in how she developed these tendencies, how she had these ideas in the first place. She was mad at her dad, so she had these insecure attachments. Every father figure that she basically had ended up being abusive in some sort of way to her. So now she has this thing in her head that created a gender bias. Gender bias was a major motivator in this, in her actions and her criminal behaviors, because she looks at these men and she only targets men. So this obviously says that she has some sort of gender bias when it comes to men. If a man wants to have his wife killed, that immediately reminds her of her dad, and that makes her want to kill him. Depending on her childhood age when the abuse and abandonment started, it can explain the development basically just like I said. Also, the lack of intervention. There was no mental or emotional support. She didn't have familial support. She didn't have a support system. She didn't have an established system that she can rely on to help her get through these moments and these processes. Initially, whenever we think of foster care, absolutely, Eileen, thank you for being here, by the way. The men in her life failed her, so she didn't have any support to work through it. Whenever we think of the lack of intervention that she had a chance. There was a chance for her to have help whenever she went into foster care. But the sad fact about foster care is that there's not enough background. There's not enough research that goes into these families that are doing foster care sometimes. I'm not saying that all foster homes are bad, because I've seen good ones. I've seen good foster homes before. Not me myself, but like I know that they exist. And usually with foster care, these kids are already coming out of a traumatic situation. These kids are already experiencing or have already experienced things that they shouldn't have experienced. So the best thing that the foster care system could have done for her is immediately get her into some help. But the thing is that she went into a foster home, and that foster home failed her just as bad as her birth home did. And that's sad. So yeah, even in foster care, she was abused, and this can directly apply to the above characteristics. So this directly goes back up to the age of trauma. The fact that she didn't have the intervention, she didn't have a healthy relationship or example to follow. She didn't have the accountability. She didn't have the trust. This also reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, throughout her life, there were certain parts of this pyramid that were missing. She didn't feel safe. She didn't have stability. There was no financial stability. Well, I can't really say that because we don't know for sure, but we know that, you know, obviously when she became an adult, she left the country. She traveled the world to try to find her dad because that's what her dad did when he was released from prison. So that basically, you know, there's things that she couldn't reach the top of this pyramid because she didn't have her basic needs met. And for anyone who might not be aware, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid that explains every single thing that you need in order to reach the top of the pinnacle, which is self-actualization. This is where you realize what your purpose in life is. You know, you're everything's great, everything's cool. You're at peace with who you are. You know what you're doing in life. You know what you want to do in life. And she could never get to that level because she'd never had the stability. She never felt safe. Some of her needs were never met, especially as she grew up. Whenever she was going through these ages or these stages of development, she didn't have the proper needs available. So, essentially, in conclusion, society looks at criminals as criminals, and this is the issue. This is one of the issues here. You know, we think of social justice, and, you know, we think of like wrongful convictions and certain things of that matter. Most criminal behavior could have been prevented with proper mental health intervention. And, you know, this leads to the whole mental health discussion. Criminal behavior, you know, it obviously comes from some sort of mental health most of the time. Most of the time. I'm not saying that like every single criminal, you know, they only committed these crimes, you know, whatever crimes because they were mentally ill or because they had certain things that they were struggling with. But it can definitely open up the discussion of, instead of condemning people because they make mistakes, why don't we actually realize what the root of the issues are and work through them, at least for first offenders. I'm not saying like if somebody consistently is breaking the law that we should like give them an out. What I'm saying is that for first time offenders, say like if somebody has like a massive mental breakdown and they go killing everybody, that's not what I mean, but like if they go on some sort of serial killing spree and they get caught, then what we can literally break down what caused them to have that mental break. We can understand like, okay, what exactly happened here? The least that we could do, put them in some sort of psychiatric hospital where they can be held. This reminds me of another, some more of the reading that I did in class this week whenever I was looking at forensic psychology and I was looking at the assessments that they do in forensic psychology. And I know one of the things that they integrate is the guilty but mentally ill verdict. Some states allow the GBMI verdict, and that's guilty but mentally ill. And what this means is, like, yes, they're guilty, they did this crime, but what they end up doing is they start their sentence in a psychiatric hospital. Once they complete the treatment, then they're moved from the hospital to a prison. I don't necessarily agree with that just because our America's prison systems are kind of trash, but that's my opinion. So yeah, let's call this a call to action for Congress to implement better mental health programs to rehabilitate rather than cause more economic stress. This is where I was getting at with the whole kind of seeking like how we can fix these issues rather than just put a band-aid on it. Whenever you're convicting criminals and you're just constantly putting criminals in prison, constantly, like prisons are paid for by taxpayer money. Like, why don't we actually take some time to realize who can be rehabilitated? Like, if we can actually realize who can actually be rehabilitated, and we can actually put them into proper programs that can rehabilitate them, reintroduce them into society, and then we can carry on. And then obviously, if they keep repeating the same offense or worse offenses, then we can escalate to prison sentences. Like that's just right, and that's a sad reality, Eileen. She said that she would love that, but people make money off of prisoners, and that's true, sadly. And I mean, honestly, when we're looking at people look at criminals as criminals, just like I said, like society looks at criminals as criminals, and criminals are also people. Criminals are also humans who have had life experiences just like the rest of us. And I feel like if sometimes, let me slow down. People who have had mental health issues, I'm actually going to take this a step further. People who have committed suicide, if somebody would have just reached out, like whenever they seen the signs, and that's another conversation. If people could be more aware of the behaviors and the signs that people put out. People emit behaviors before they do things most of the time, like 99% of the time. People just don't choose to pay attention. People just don't they choose to be like, oh, that person's crazy, and that's another discussion, but I'm going to save us that for another day. It's just one of those things. Like, I feel like this world lacks a lot of empathy and compassion because, like, I don't know. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate about this, but like I said, criminals, they're human too. I'm not saying that, like, we should have let Charles Manson be free or anything. That's not at all what I'm saying. He obviously orchestrated a cult and orchestrated a whole event of murder. That's a long drawn out thing. He deserved to be in prison. So that's a whole other topic. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people who experience these things and then they don't have the intervention, you can't be surprised whenever they start committing criminal behaviors. Now, considering this character, yeah, maybe she needed to be in prison. But then again, she probably could definitely benefit from some therapy. If she can meet someone that already knows, what she's gone through, what her characteristics are like, how manipulative she can be, then they can probably find a way to get through to her. They might be able to, they can be like, oh, whenever she's trying to manipulate them, she can swerve around that and be like, no, that's not what we're doing here. But again, these are all just theoretical discussions. I'm not licensed to actually say what her issues were. I'm just theorizing off of what I've read and what I know. But yeah, so now I will open up for probably a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, comments, or suggestions, please, please, please just let me know. I would be more than happy to answer anything. If anyone has anything to add whatsoever, please let me know. I would love, love, love to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, Criminal Minds is there's so many different examples. And, I totally forgot about this episode until I pulled it out of the stack. And I was like, I was so lucky because I love Aubrey Plaza. And so this was just like a really fun episode to start the whole series on. If anybody has any suggestions on what episodes they would like me to cover next, I mean, I do have a list of episodes that I plan on covering, but if anybody has any suggestions, pop them into the comments. Even if you're watching this as a recording, pop it in the comments. Let me know what episode you would like me to cover in the next 12 weeks, and I'll see if I already have it on my list, and if I don't, I might do a part 2 series, so we'll see how that goes. But aside from that, I think that's all I have for you. That is all I have for today. So I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. And if you can, please, please, please share this video. Maybe not the live link because obviously I'm about to go off, but share the recording. Share it to somebody who might find it interesting or fun to watch, especially if this might have been one of their favorite Criminal Minds episodes. If you know anybody who might have personified the same behavior, let me know. Send the recording link to them after I post it. Yeah, I'll see everybody next Thursday. And as always, thank you all for tuning in. And I'll see you all next week. Have a wonderful weekend. And remember to be empathetic and compassionate and consider other perspectives when thinking about life.